Hello everybody, I'm your host Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do try to stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, usually around Tuesday nights at around 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, but fear not if you ever miss the live show, because it'll be uploaded under the YouTube channel of Zenitsu, as well as being on various podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. Usually those uploads are around Thursday mornings. So please feel free to do the whole social media doobly-doo thing and leave that rating, like, follow, subscribe, whatever, depending on the platform that you're listening on. We like to pretend it helps the podcast, especially since we're over 100 episodes strong at this point, so that's kind of neat. But today I am back with Jay Stewart, and we have a lot of metadata to go over because Bandai actually decided to do something I never thought I'd see them do, and that is actually give us good metadata. It's not perfect by any stretch of the word, but something from them is better than nothing, and what they did give us actually was more than what we were able to put together before. Minus the fact that we don't really have a lot of the deck lists, but that's neither here nor there. So we'll be talking a lot about the BT21 meta as a result, and we're also going to be talking about the EX9. Like kind of our initial thoughts and impressions. We're not going to go card by card and review the whole set, because the whole set's not worth reviewing. That should already tell you something. But before we get into that, Jay Stewart, I'll turn it over to you for the question of the week.
Yeah, so the question of the week, gotta pull it back up here. So it comes from last week's episode of the podcast, and it comes from, I'm going to just say Phantom280. And that's, his question is, why do we believe that Wind Guardians is the worst of the family? He states that he's tried both NSP and NSO and got his teeth kicked in, but when he plays Wind Guardian, he actually has seen some winning results. So to me personally, the reason why I personally don't think Wind Guardian is as good of a strategy and everything is mostly because of the fact there is no actual win con when it comes to the deck. Like if I was to take Deep Savers, for example, the win con's kind of just using the Siegramon engine cards, and you're kind of playing out multiple bodies, getting their on-plays effect constantly going off, and you're actually got rush inheritables and stuff that, and even just interactions of like Digivolve that could stop your opponent from doing what they're doing, or even just interacting with your opponent. So there's like win cons in that. So as far as like Nature Spirits, I don't know if their win con's even that great at all. I can't even think what their win con is. Same with the Nightmare Soldiers, but like when it comes to Wind Guardians, like compared to out of all the other family decks, the Wind Guardians definitely felt the most incomplete on release compared to all the other ones, especially NSP and everything. Because I believe NSP had their boss monster day one.
Yeah, so my answer is a little bit more data driven. So I look at a lot of deck profiles, and I look at a lot of databases when it comes to like competitive results. So the big three that I generally use, or it's mostly the big two, I use CG Guide for like getting my finger on the pulse on the Japanese side of things, and then if you really want, you go into like X and search some of the hashtags, and you'll be able to find like the Japanese side of things and topping lists and whatnot. So I do sort through that between X and CG Guide, and then I also use like Eggman events, and I just casually use meta, even though meta is basically like the middle ground between CG Guide and Eggman events. They do have some like other local level data, at least on the English side of things, that isn't necessarily always reported on. So it's not like they're the worst source ever, even though like I find everything that they post in other places for the most part. When I looked at all of the family decks, Wind Guardians had zero success. Like literally zero success. Nobody was playing it, and if they were, nobody was winning it. At least from what I was able to do my research on. So that's partially like a good portion of my perception is nobody has done anything with the deck warranting it to get a win, to get any kind of attention on it. So to me, that's a big sign that it's not worth anyone's time, when I have seen very, very, very mild success with Nature Spirits, Nightmare Soldiers, and Deep Savers. And Deep Savers had the most success out of all of them. So that goes into my overall perception of, obviously, what Wing Guardians is doing is weaker in comparison, because granted, like, yes, you look at Nature Spirits now, Nature Spirits is probably just as unplayable as Wing Guardians, but the fact that it had some success gives people a foundation to go off of to be able to iterate. And I think, like, Wing Guardians with the new EX9 stuff, the fact that it finally gets its boss monster, which is wild, and it gets its DNA enabler, which also is kind of wild, is a good sign for them to at least be able to do something. But I feel like as is in the BT21 environment, Wing Guardians it's way too weak. Because a lot of these family decks have very similar play patterns where it's just like, yeah, just figure out a way to tempo up into high-level Digimon, then high-level Digimon plays out another Digimon to enable a DNA. And, like, that's the core gameplay loop between all of them. And I think Deep Savers is the one that literally does it the best. And I think in terms of that game plan also, I think that Nightmare Soldiers does it the second best. Because outside
it's more purple.
Yeah, it's more, well, it's not only that it's purple, it's more consistent to set up. Because if you look at Nature Spirits, they're using Eldradimon to RNG the extra body to then maybe DNA with. So, like, that's the awkward part of them. And I think, like, at least now you have a little bit, like, as of EX9, you're going to have a little bit better success at it, but I think it's coming a little bit too late in my perspective, where it probably will just never be seen on the map. But I could very easily be wrong. But I do think, like, Wing Guardians, when it gets its boss monster, probably is going to be better. Well, it's not a probably, it is going to be better than Nature Spirits. I think Nature Spirits just got more Nature Spirits cards in total, but all of the Nature Spirits cards are kind of just mediocre to bad.
Yeah, plus I think Nature Spirits is also trying to multitask with like 3, if not 4 colors. I think they have blue, green, black, maybe yellow if I remember correctly, but
yeah, they have
Nature
a little
Spirits
bit of yellow.
Yeah, and like with the Nightmare Soldiers, it's more one central color. It still has multicolors, but it's a more purple base focus. And as far as like the Deep Savers, it's practically all blue, so you could use good generic blue, like blue memory boost, blue training cards to kind of help keep the deck consistent and everything.
Yeah, and I think with Wing Guardians, there are obviously 2 colors, blue-green, which is a very well-supported color combination. I'm not gonna lie there. But I think it is just the fact that, like, Deep Savers, yes, being probably 70 to 80% in a single color, definitely gives it a huge advantage over some of the others, because they do have cards from all the other colors, but usually, as we learned with Nightmare Soldiers, adopting the dog package and foregoing half of its other cards, and then you also have the aquatic side of things helping support Deep Savers, definitely gives those 2 decks a little bit of a boost, because you have other things that the deck is able to do outside of its whole family-orientated game plan. So I hope that kind of, like, breaks it down a little bit more on why I'm not super high on Wing Guardians. Like, I think if there was a better, more clear-cut game plan when it came to supporting a single color, I think Wing Guardians could do some interesting things, but it still feels a little too divided. I'm not saying it's god-awful. There's obviously worse decks than it, but it doesn't necessarily scream, I'm super great at what I'm trying to do, because it's trying to be an aggressive deck. I will say that. It does a lot of things I personally like, with unsuspending and alliance and playing stuff out for free It's just, unfortunately, there's decks that do it better, and when it comes to the other family decks, it still is kind of lacking. But yeah, so that's the question of the week. I know last week we kind of talked about some of the new stuff. I don't know if anything like new has super developed.
I think the only real major thing is the fact that we have more Eaters cards and everything. Like, we have a tamer for it and more of the Adam and... What was the other one? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank what the other one is. No, it's not Eve. I could be wrong on that. Actually, it might be Eve.
We got Mother, yeah.
No, it is Eve. You're right.
Yeah. So I think
we got a little bit better idea of it.
Yeah, I think we're missing, I think I posted it on my own personal Discord server, that we're still missing probably like 3 or 4 different Eaters that they have yet introduced. So there's still more to the archetype left to be seen, and I think there is enough for it to actually be a real deck. I don't know if it's going to be able to get future support outside of like generic Cyber Sleuth support, but it definitely has the chops to be a real.
It wouldn't surprise me if they don't necessarily introduce more Eater cards, necessarily, because there is more and other alternate Eater forms that do show up in the Hacker's Memory, if I remember correctly. So they might save that for the Hacker's Memory set and everything.
I could see that. I'm trying to pull it up on which Eaters we technically are missing. So we are missing Eden, Bit, Legion, and Arata. Arata Eater, specifically. That's like his half form.
Yeah, that one I can see showing up in this set.
Yeah, so I think like Arata is going to be showing up, and then, like you said, probably maybe one other one. I didn't finish Hacker's Memory, so I don't know which Eater shows up there.
Yeah, I think it's just like a Eater that possesses the main girl and everything. The one that has the whole memory overloads thing. I can't remember what her name is. Like, I think that Eater takes a special form because it's eating away at her data. So yeah, there's probably going to be some more alternate Eater forms for the deck in the next set. I think that's almost guaranteed that Eaters will continue to even get support after this. So we also did get a new Rena also showed up, the All-Force Tamer, and even a new All-Force Ace as well.
They're interesting.
Yeah, they're interesting. I don't know if I would say it's like groundbreaking compared to like the BT11 though, or anything. Because I think the Rena, the most she does is gives your guy jamming, but I think there's so many ways for you to get jamming in All-Force with all the old cards, so it just kind of makes it a little irrelevant.
I think like the Ace is a little on the irrelevant side, considering the whole idea of the new Rena is to bounce herself to the hand and then have the Digimon play her out, but the Ace doesn't really play her out. So it becomes a little awkward because the old one, the BT11 one, does. So like that's where things get awkward. But I think the BT11 one is strong enough to where it's like maybe you'll play 1 or 2 aces just because you can. But yeah, outside of spoilers, I honestly don't think we got any new relevant news, considering we already covered, me and Mark covered last week, all of the Bandai news, which is just more sets and more products. We got new event packs, and they suck.
Oh yeah, because it's like the store tournament Gigimon is like the best one that is in there, and everything else is irrelevant.
Yeah, it's literally the last 2 or 3 store tournament packs just slammed together and thrown in. It does say on the website it's subject to change, but usually when it's posted on the website like it is, usually that kind of solidifies what it is. And I think from a competitive aspect, that event pack is easily one of the worst event packs we have ever seen. Like, very easily by far.
Yeah, because I don't think they're foiled or anything, if I'm not mistaken.
They might be foiled, but that would be it. But like, then you also have the winner stamped cards, which are already foiled, so it's not like these ones are really anything special. And then I know that...
And they're not even changing the art.
Yeah, and some of the cards are already getting reprinted in Billion Bullets. So, like, again, they're cards we don't really need. So, I think that's a huge miss, especially since this competitive year so far has probably been one of the worst competitive years. Like, I think outside of the last event pack, like Event Pack 7 being cracked, this new event pack probably isn't even worth playing for. Like, honestly. And that's disappointing because the participation stuff doesn't seem like it's super attractive either. So it's just like, from a competitive player's perspective, like, outside of notoriety and the invite, I don't have any incentive to actually try because the cards aren't worth me wanting to get.
Well, especially if they're not even going to hold any kind of value, because I mean, like, most likely, like, a lot of these events are more in person and everything. Like, there's way more in person versus online. So based on this first half, so to say, is what I'm going to go with, kind of using as a example. It's like, if the second half where this event pack is going to be in, they do a lot more, like another giant wave of in-store regionals and everything. I mean, depending on who gets the invites, I mean, you could potentially be driving 3 to 4 hours to even go to these if you even get in them. And getting those cards is like, well, that's not going to make up for my trip.
Right. Like, I would drive 3 hours for, like, that's what I did. That was my drive to the store regional that I participated in Wave 1. And again, the regional pack was good enough, like the event pack was good enough for me to make my monies back, because just as a player, make it worth my while to want to play. So like, I got in mine promo Shadramon. Like, cool, not only is that an expensive card, but if I was a player who didn't have that card before, now I do. And that card was previously super hard to get, so that card alone, just the gamble for that potential, is what would have made that more worth it, and did make it worth it. Even though, yes, it was just one, but that was one more than I didn't have. So, not saying I'm going to be playing Red, Purple, Imperial, but just as an example.
If you wanted to, you could.
Right. It puts me one step closer to it. And, like, I'm a big advocate for accessibility, but, like, you don't need to reprint cards that are already highly accessible to the ground unless they're, like, staples that are ran in every single deck, like the training scrambles and memory boosts. Like, those are okay to reprint to the ground. But, like, store promos for very specific decks that people aren't playing already, not a good move. Like, these event packs, and especially, like, looking at some of the past ones, they always print good cards too late, unless the good card is still good enough for us to be wanting to use still. So, like, that's why Protoform was just such a very premium one, is because Bandai probably expected that card to not necessarily rotate out of people's perceptions, but fade out a little bit, and it didn't. So the card kept a steady price, and it had the steady demand, and when they reprinted that card, the demand carried over to make that event pack even better.
Yeah. I mean, I think they also could have tried to do something too with the event pack and everything. Like, something that I think they could have easily done and everything. Because we know they make these sets, like, I don't know how many months, like 6 months. I'm just going to ball guess here.
It's usually a year out. I as somebody who's worked in the industry, it's about a year out.
Yeah, so, like, if they had this set already in mind, like, more than a year out and everything, something they could have easily, and I mean easily done, and this is something everyone's been asking for, is they could have given us a BT11 Rena reprint in this event pack and everything. Not only does this encourage players who, because the Secret Rare is really stupid expensive, it's way, like, it's not like Medieval Galamon that's only been out for a year. Like, this Rena's been, like, long ago printed and everything.
No, so they're saving her for the Heroine set 2. Because we got Heroine set 1, which was fine, but Heroine set 2 has some of the more, I'll just say, premium characters when it comes to fan favorites. So maybe her reprint will come then. But even then, now that we have the OG Rena and this new Rena, there's a very high chance that it's going to be a reprint of the brand new Rena, just so they don't have to reprint a secret rare card, and maybe they'll save that for the reprint set next year in March. Like, who knows? But I think, like, Bandai definitely needs to do a better job on their reprint policy overall. I'm not saying they need to be as aggressive as, like, Yu-Gi-Oh, but maybe take more of a Magic approach, where it's just like every now and then they'll have a good reprint, and like having a good reprint set is already a step in the right direction. And let's just pray that Bandai doesn't screw it up again.
Yeah, because I think they did like kind of did a recent like announcement of like different things they're doing. Like they are, I'm not gonna say it's Resurgence Booster 2.0, but it looks like there is going to be an actual main set reprint thing in the future. So
yeah, so ideally it should replace an EX set. So Bandai wanted to do 2 EX sets, 4 BT sets, and 1 reprint set. Like, that was their 7-set year outlook. So that's why this year we have an extra EX set, and last year we had an extra EX set, was because those were supposed to be reprint sets, but because they completely botched it the first time they attempted to do it, they were reluctant to try again, and now they're a little bit more okay with trying it again. But yeah, I think like product-wise, 7's probably fine. Like, it still feels really fast, but that's probably because it's still poorly spaced out. But as long as we stick to the 7 sets a year, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think it should be fine too.
So, I mean, because they very easily could up it to 8, and then everyone's wallets are going to get super strained. Which is funny, because, like, one of the big products that we don't have that I kind of wish we had more of was starter decks, because you look at, like, One Piece and Dragon Ball, and they have, like, starter decks out the waz, and I'm just like, where's our starter decks? We're lucky if we get 2 starter decks a year at this point.
Yeah, because I think the only ones we've gotten so far is the Adventure starter decks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and then at the very end of the year, we get the 1 Sakuya Advanced deck. Meanwhile, One Piece just literally got like 6 brand new starter decks, and they're already almost on starter deck 30. And I'm just like, they have half the amount of sets we do. And they have more starter decks, and better quality starter decks, at least like the last couple batches. I do wish that Digimon had more starter decks, because that would at least make the game more accessible as a whole. I think this is a good point where we probably should talk about the metadata, because we have a absolute butt ton of it. So, Bandai, for each of the 3 regions, we have English, Japanese, and Chinese. We have a total representation between a set time frame, and then that's in the percentage. And then we also have the what made top 16s in that same time frame. So, unfortunately, Huang's Adventure win and Chris's Purple Hybrids win are not going to be in this data set. So, it is technically incomplete, but the fact that this is still the vast majority of the picture allows us to be able to have information to look at and infer. And then I took that and threw it into an Excel spreadsheet, and I did even more beautiful math things. So I'll just throw the beautiful math that's not very well explained at all. Yeah, so I was doing math. So I was trying to paint a bigger picture than what Bandai gave us. What do you think about this data, Jay Stewart?
Yeah, so looking over it, I mean, there, like, just for the English version and everything, there is a very significant, like, large amount of decks. I mean, there's some that have, like, very small percentiles and everything. But even looking at the World Championship, I'm kind of surprised by the number of different varieties when it comes to that as well. Again, this is all English. Like, going into the Japanese and everything, like, just as a fun little comparison, Japanese World Championship, it's not really as diverse, and I just kind of find that, like, very interesting, so to say. And then, what is this? Chinese and everything, it's about as diverse as us, so.
Yeah.
But one thing I kind of do notice right away when it comes to, like, literally all the data and everything, besides the World Championship for both Japanese and ours as well, like, there is, like, a very, very large representation of Megidramon in a lot of these pictures, it looks like.
Yeah, so I have Mikidramon's data. So Migidramon, just as an example, he has out of all 3 regions in this time frame, the percentage that he makes of the top decks is 28.37%, or if you want to just round it up or down, 28%. So Migidramon is 28% of the winning decks. But of all of the regions, based on the data that we have, Migidramon only makes up about 8 or 9% of what's actually being played. That conversion rate, or like, performance delta. That performance delta is insane. Like, it's at least over 100% when it comes to its performance delta, which means that the deck is very clearly overperforming, and there's something about that deck that is incredibly strong, stronger than what probably is reasonable for where the rest of the game is, and it's definitely warping and skewing the game by a significant margin if it is having such a large performance delta.
Yeah, I don't know if it's maybe this is a factor why there's like a amount of overall performance is because of the fact that Migidramon does kind of play somewhat familiar and similar to Purple Hybrid, and after the ban restriction list, Purple Hybrid players just went, oh, I'll go ahead and play this. It's relatively the same thing, so not much I need to change about my philosophy when it comes to strategy or gameplay wise. I don't know if maybe that's a factor.
Honestly, I think it's just the speed. Like, Migidramon presents a new speed standard that is very clearly unhealthy for the game, which is why the few people that actually, it's not even few, because he's still in like the top 3 when it comes to play percent, but he's on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to the top 3's play percent. But it's very clearly because he is able to do something that Purple Hybrids wasn't able to do, and that's basically OTK. Like, just straight up OTK before the opponent is set up, before the opponent even knows that you're able to do it, because you could just be sitting on a hand of, like, your hand is all set up, and then you just Gravity Crush 3-4 times, and then the game is magically over because you just printed memory for free with 0 repercussions. So that's part of it. Like, that's why a lot of people want Gravity Crush banned, and why it should have gotten banned to begin with, when all of the other 0-cost memory gain options are limited at this point, and that's the only one that's not. Of course, people are going to abuse it in the fastest deck that also is able to OTK and reset itself very efficiently. Granted, the deck does lose very hardcore to any kind of good defense. Like, a well-timed ace can really just screw the entire plan up, if the ace is actually good.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but so what I remember, Purple Hybrid, they mill from the deck. I think Migidramon does mill from the top of the deck as well, but I believe they also have a lot more draw and discard capability. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, Migidramon has draw and discard, so, like, it's leveraging both mill and draw and discard, and the fact that, like, Purple Hybrids never really was able to OTK very efficiently, if at all. It was just a good deck at presenting consistent pressure, whereas Migidramon, when it's ready to present pressure, it could just go all the way out of nowhere.
I was gonna say, like, just the draw and discard, that's already far superior versus the mill and everything, because the mill, it's like kind of randomized and everything. Like, you can accidentally mill, your Gravity Crushes will go, oh, well, there's no way for me to get them back, or I gotta waste all these resources in order to get it back. But, like, the drawing and discarding is, like, so much better because you control what goes into the grave, so to say.
Well, it's a lot of compounding factors because it's leveraging X-Antibody Digimon, which is just free extra cycling, to make the deck more consistent. Then it does have access to draw and discard on top of self-mill, so it's going to be setting itself up when it's doing its thing for the most part. And the only real out, and you can't really stop it because it's doing all of that during its own setup turn, similar to how the Anubis engine worked, where it's just like, yeah, I would love to just stop you from doing that, except I can't because the card that you're putting into your trash you're taking out almost immediately, And Megidramon operates on a similar type fashion, where it's just like, yeah, the cards that I'm milling are cards that I'm actually going to be probably using somewhere down the line. And it's just a very, very strong and efficient deck, and it can move very quickly and hit really hard. But yeah, it does fall into the same gameplay pattern where it's just like, my big body comes out, blows up everything, goes away, resets. Except Megidramon's reset also presents more aggression. So that's partially why Megidramon is seeing such success, especially when you look at the other two most played decks, which is Sakuyamon. So Sakuyamon has a total 10.8% play rate, is how much we've seen that deck, and the overall topping percent is 12.8 essentially. So it's not very far off, which isn't like the highest performance delta, but it's still a positive one. Not like overly positive like Megidramon. So like I would say Sakuyamon is probably performing averagely for the amount of people playing it. That's kind of what that means. And then you look at Royal Knights, where Royal Knight's performance delta is actually better than Sakuya's, probably because of the Megidramon matchup and the fact that it just is an insane deck in of itself. And it is sitting at 9.5% play rate with a 15% top representation. So that's still positive. It's more positive than Sakuya, so that's telling me Royal Knights is slightly overperforming. But again, that could very easily just be because of a matchup spread. And then I've been saying this over and over again, and people somehow seem to ignore me. But Imperial Dramon is the 4th best deck as of this data set.
Blue-green, right?
Yes, blue-green. The performance delta on red-purple is actually very bad compared to blue-green. So blue-green, not only is it the 4th best deck because it makes up 7% of the top deck's representations, again, as of this data, but its performance delta its overall representation is just under 4% at 3.7% total representation, which is really low for the fact that its performance delta is really good, which indicates that, hey, the few people that are bringing Imperial Dramon are still doing really good, if not better, with Imperial Dramon. The blue-green version. If you want the red-purple version, its performance delta is actually really bad, and it has a play rate of 5.4%, which is way higher than Imperial's, but the fact that it has a way lower conversion rate into top representation, being less than 5%, or just about 5%, doesn't necessarily bode very well for that deck's overall success. And, like, the other part of it is, if you're playing Red, Purple, Imperial, you might as well just be playing Megidramon, because they're doing almost the same exact thing, which is ironic. It's just, obviously, Megidra's game plan is better than Red Purple's, because it probably needs less pieces, and it can OTK way easier.
Yeah, and it's also just set up so much faster, because
people discovered how good the Wormmon is, where it just allows you to digivolve from your trash, so that way you could just very easily set up whatever you want. And as long as it's in your trash, it's basically fair game to just recombo all over again. So, Red Purple Imperial, way worse than Blue Green Imperial by a pretty decent margin, and Blue Green Imperial is the 4th best deck of this format. Then when it comes to the 5th best deck, that actually is tied between Gallant and Red Purple Imperial, but Gallant has, they have basically the same performance delta, so they've been technically underperforming. The 6th best deck is Purple Hybrids. That has actually a pretty decent performance delta because its representation is only 1.5%, and it made 4.25% of top representation. So that's actually pretty good, showing that Purple Hybrids is still a very strong deck and should not be underestimated. Then the 7th best deck is Heroes. I don't know how. It actually has a decent performance delta. It's pretty positive, same kind of numbers as Purple Hybrids. Then the 8th best deck is Purple Dog Engine. Most of the time it's Levia, but sometimes it's Levia and Lord Knight. That has an okay performance delta. It's not super great. It's still positive, showing that it's still a very strong deck and shouldn't be underestimated. But considering it's only making like not even 3% of the top decks, doesn't necessarily bode well. But again, that's probably because there's not as many people playing it, but the people that are playing it are actually good on it, and it can still do very strong things. And then the last decks, in terms of like the top decks that are even remotely worth talking about, because outside of this we're getting into like the 1%, is Galacti and Magnamon. Galacti has a better performance delta than Magnamon, because Galacti makes up 3% of what people are playing, and Magnamon makes up 4%, and they have the same 2% top representation. It's not a lot, and I think like between all of the decks that I mentioned, that's probably actually I could just hit sum and just add it all up. That's 90% of the meta is in those. As far as like what's actually doing well enough that's noteworthy, 90% is condensed between. So you have 11 decks that make up 90% of the entire meta, which is normal. Looking back at some of my old data, it's performing like most other sets that have this type of data spread where Megidramon is the pack leader, and then you have like 1 or 2 decks that are chasing it within the 10% range, and then everything else is like sub 10%. So it really kind of like, of the decks that they listed a total of 28 different decks between all of their different slides, which is a lot, but a lot of the decks, like 3 of the decks literally have no data to support anything. Or no, 4 decks, I lied. 4 decks that they mentioned had some play rate that was large enough to be noteworthy have literally done nothing. And then everything else is like literally in the 1% or below. So yeah, realistically, this format has 11 decks. And then,
yeah, because honestly, I would have thought it was like a little bit smaller, like maybe 8 decks, but 11's still good.
I mean, that's being generous. Realistically, like I said, like earlier, we have 3 decks that are making up 60% of the format. Like the top 4 decks are making 65% of the format. So you have 4 decks that are making 65% of the top decks. And as far as overall representation percentage, those 4 top decks are 9, 20, 30, 35% of what's being played. So there's a lot of people playing not good decks, is essentially what I'm like reading into this. Or like they're good decks, it's just they haven't been good enough to actually have a good performance delta to convert the play rate to justify the win rate. That's all I'm getting out of it. And I know like this data set isn't 100% complete and is very obviously skewed to what I was literally limited to. Keep that in mind. And then I know you mentioned, Jay Stewart, something about the regional differences between North America, or like English and Japanese. I actually don't know if China's best of 3 or not.
Yeah, and the only reason I bring it up is because like there's a difference with how like not only is time constraint, but also how many chances you have to win your match and everything. Because I mean, if there's a deck out there that just like, if they so happen to have like one bad hand and everything, and like could have really used that second and third chance to try to win, and there's like some other decks that are just really high rolling and everything that might have the data skewed more for them. Like if I was to take a look here. For example, the Red Purple Imperial Dramon in Japan is third best according to their World Championship versus how for us, like Imperial is like the fifth, I think you said, or was it was fifth.
For us, in terms of play representation, it's Red Purple is theirs, and and Blue Green is our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is our sixth in terms of representation per region. Our Red Purple Imperial is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is 10th.
But yeah,
so,
like you get what I mean with that. Like the more chances like a deck has, like either like it or the more high rolling it is, the less likely they are to top and everything. Versus how like with the data, it shows that Imperial Purple Virus is just really good for them, like being the third best.
Yeah,
according to this spreadsheet.
I do think that type of difference is partially contributing to skewing the data. I'm not gonna lie there, but that's partially like why Japan probably decided to want to play Sakuya en masse, is because she is a super consistent deck. It's just, again, looking at the their play representation, Sakuya is their number one, but in terms of what actually was winning, it was Megidramon, because Megidramon, shocker, is probably just as consistent and, if not faster, than Sakuyamon, because Sakuyamon has to do all of its Sakuya shenanigans, which means it has to see all of the options, and Megidramon having better access at using its trash means that it could just be more consistent with its overall game plan. And because it's more consistent, it just moves faster, and because Sakuyamon is a literally do nothing deck where you sit there and you're not actually playing the game until you basically combo off, and then you actually start playing the game from there. Where Megidramon, yes, it's technically a do nothing deck, but it could do a little bit more proactive plays than what Sakuyamon can. And as we learned, being more proactive in Digimon means that you're probably going to be better, because you have the ability to do more. Because sitting there doing nothing, leaving yourself open, hoping to find all of your combo pieces and then comboing off is like fine and dandy and all. That's literally what Imperial is doing. So it's just like anyone who's playing Sakuyamon probably was also playing Imperial, because high-level Floodgate that the opponent has zero answers for and probably will not have any answers for seems really good, and that's exactly what Imperial is doing, is high-level Floodgates on the 5s and then the 6s, and then it just locks the opponent out and says, you reasonably can't play the game, because I did my thing. And Megidramon's just trying to edge through that by being faster than those decks, which, according to the data, it is. But I get the idea on the regional differences does impact not only what we play, but how we play. But I feel like, for the most part, almost all of the same decks are being represented in their, like, big data spread as ours. Like, deck-wise, they're not doing anything realistically different. They just have their own regional biases. So like, they're playing more Adventures, and our Adventures is in the 1 percentile because we realized Adventures is not great until Huang decided to prove everyone wrong, and even then it still takes a very skilled person to be able to pilot that deck, and it's not something anyone can just pick up and have immediate success with. Whereas Sakuyamon is a little bit easier on that end, where you just have to learn the combo and then nothing else actually matters. Like, you just combo off and then tell the opponent to go take a hike. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna play Solitaire, and you could think about doing stuff later. Unless you're Royal Knights, which is why Royal Knights is the second best deck, is because it can tackle both Sakuyamon and Megidramon. Like, you could start, like, based on what these decks are doing, you could start painting the picture on how and why we got here.
It, like, definitely has, like, various factors to it, but, because, like, I could definitely see, like, Megidramon's probably got more representation versus, like, Royal Knights, just maybe because due to the fact that
it's cheaper.
The deck's cheaper, exactly, yeah. So the accessibility to it is, like, so much easier versus Royal Knights needing to get a lot of older cards from an older set, and then in combination with the newer cards. While Megidramon has, like, there is some older cards, I'm sure, but it's like they're not like, maybe besides like one BT13 Gallimon, that's like really the only expensive older card I would imagine the deck's probably having to get, because everything else is like
it's the
so
Omni.
easy accessible.
Yeah, it's the Omni, like the secret rare Omnimon. That's one of the more expensive cards. And the Gallantmon did have a reprint, but it's the promo Gallant that they're also running on top of that. It's the Gallantmon Medieval that is on top of that. Like, there's a lot of other compounding factors that's making the deck expensive and not super accessible. Same thing with like Sakuyamon, where it's just like, oh yeah, Sakuyamon, you have Ruin Mode and Volderarm as like the bulk of its price on top of a promo. So like, if I had to like guesstimate the range and cost, like on your average Royal Knight deck, it's probably $200-ish. Sakuyamon's probably around the 150 mark, and then Megidramon is like, outside of one promo Gallant and one secret rare Gallant, it's probably like sub 100.
Yeah, I could definitely see it being like around the $100 mark.
It's definitely a very accessible deck, which is why we decided to pick up on it as quickly as we did, and why it has such a decent representation, at least like ours compared to everyone else's. I think China is the only one that really seemed like they kind of understood the power of Megidramon, because Megidramon in China was their most played deck, followed by Sakuya, followed by Royal Knights. So you see, like, even between the different regions, there's still this very similar pattern where those are just three of the stronger decks, and then just like Japan, they also have a decent representation of Red Purple Imperial, but as we were seeing with the data, Red Purple Imperial has an absolutely abysmal conversion rate into actually being able to top. So, like, it's not saying he can't top, it's just saying the conversion rate is really bad, to where it's probably not something I would highly recommend doing unless you're a really big diehard Imperial person. Because like I said in previous episodes, the top three decks, Megidramon, Royal Knights, and Sakuya, are covering the entire spectrum of what's actually, like, what's being played. It's like, oh, you want to play Red Purple Imperial? Well, Megidramon does the same thing but better. You want to play Blue Green Imperial? Well, Sakuyamon basically does the same thing but better. You want to play like 7 Great Demon Lords? Well, Royal Knights does the same thing but better. Like, you want to play a more control-orientated defensive deck, similar to like maybe Examon or something? Royal Knights still kind of does it but better. Or Sakuyamon. Like, those three decks encompass the entire spectrum of what is actually allowed to exist in what's being played in Digimon. I would say the only one that's like an outlier is Adventures, but really, if you think about it, Royal Knights is doing what Adventures is doing, but better.
Yeah, easily so much better.
Because it's like, I'm going to hard play Digimon, and then I'm going to ace bait you and have my low-end Digimon be able to figure out a way to chip, or if they don't chip, just control. And like, that's the way kind of felt like Adventures turned into, is just, I'm just gonna hard play level 5s, control your field, and then wait to ace bait you. And then just, oh, you killed my Digimon? Cool. Replay a level 5, continue to control you out of the game. Well, Royal Knights does something very similar. So, like, it's wild to think that those three decks cover the entire play spectrum of the game, which is why they have the highest, not only win rates and conversion rates, but representation.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the adventure deck, it needs to play out its tamers and everything in order to help reduce the cost, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes, and you look at Royal Knights, and it doesn't need tamers. It just automatically does that, and its tamer helps continue that type of game plan while also adding in some extra card draw. Like, their tamer just helps. Like, their deck was already pretty good without the tamer, and then with the tamer, it just makes their deck even better. And then they also got an option that helps search, and that adds to the consistency. And then Omekamon is a really good defensive tool that could just instantly hose on the opponent. So, yeah, like, if you are basically an Adventures player, Royal Knights is basically the better version of what you're trying to do. It's just you're leveraging the new adventures pieces, which is a little bit cheaper than building Royal Knights. Actually, it's a good margin cheaper than Royal Knights.
Well, I would even argue that, obviously with like a adventure deck, you need to pay to play the Tamers and everything to help reduce your play costs. Royal Knights, you don't need to do that. You literally just flip over an egg and tug for literally for free, and you're literally reducing your play costs more and more each turn for free.
Yes. So, like, if you think about it, like, going back to what I was saying in terms of those 3 decks cover the entire spectrum, it's like, if you think about why people are playing Sakuyamon over Imperial Blue-Green, is because Imperial Blue-Green still has some natural inconsistencies that do not exist in Sakuyamon for the same exact end result. I'm going to go up into a level 6/7 Digimon, and then floodgate you out of the game so you can't reasonably come back. So, needing to find all of these extra pieces leads to consistency issues. That is what made people drop Imperial for possibly Sakuyamon. I'm just using this as an example because I know Dan Vang, a very well-known Imperial player, was last seen playing Sakuyamon because that's the gameplay style he enjoys, is going up into a big high-level Digimon and telling the opponent to go take a hike. I'm going to be floodgating you so you can't do anything. Because that's what Imperial was doing. Funny enough, Imperial was a combo, like a more aggressive combo deck before, but that's not what he is now. Red-Purple Imperial, natural inconsistencies based on needing to find extra additional pieces and having a harder setup than Megidramon for doing almost the exact same thing. It's not hard to see why those 3 decks decided to rise above everything else. Even though there's a good representation of everything else, it's just looking at the data, it's very easy to see why those 3 decks are the best decks in the entire game right now. And unfortunately, EX9 really isn't going to be shaking that foundation. It's just going to be adding a couple of new decks into the mix that might be able to do something interesting.
Because I think there's only, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's only 3 decks that really could potentially, and I mean potentially, really do anything. I think one of the 3 definitely has the most, but, because, to me, when I look at EX9, the only 3 decks I see getting, and this is the order I'm thinking of, starting at the bottom of with the most potential, is going to be the Puppets, mostly because of the fact that the level 5 can help turbo into your level 6 for free, and even the level 6 in that one, it's kind of helps with the alliance blocker setup and everything, filling in what the deck was missing, so to say. And then obviously I think that
Kaguyamon is very easily the new boss monster of that deck. Sendril will be lucky to see 2 copies of the EX7 version be played.
Yeah, and then I think Machinedramon would be the next best potential, just because, there is some die-hard Machinedramon fans, and theoretically speaking, EX9's version is so much better than the EX1 version, and as far as play cost wise and how much memory you actually need to set up and everything, even requiring theoretically quote unquote less pieces in order to play them out for free or with the reduced cost and everything. And I think the deck that has the most that we're probably going to see have a lot more representation of people trying it out is going to be the Omnimon, just because of that Alter S is just, when you read it, it's so stupid of what it can do.
Yeah, no, all 3 decks that you just mentioned have incredibly high ceilings in terms of what they're capable of. I think a lot of people are going to be experimenting with Omnimon the most because that card's just overtly busted. It's just, how do we make getting into him easy? And once that puzzle piece is solved, then he has the potential to be just a very hyper oppressive deck, because he basically does 2 of the 3 big things that decks need to do in order to be competitive, which is have a big boss monster that could potentially end the game the second you go up into him, and have a big boss monster that the opponent can't reasonably do anything about when you go up into him. So it's just I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. All I have to do is just get up into this card, and that's going to be the real struggle.
Yeah, because I think there's 3 ways the deck could get played in. I think the least likely played is going to be the Omnimon DNA, because I think that one focuses more too keen on Wargreymon, Garurumon, Omnimon, so to say, versus the Alter S. There's also the EX4 Black Base, Agumon, Gabumon, because those ones, you practically rely on having both bodies on the field, and when you evo into one, it kind of creates a chain effect and everything to keep bouncing back and forth and everything. So that might be another way to play it. I've heard there's talk that apparently some people are thinking they can actually throw this in the Adventure deck, because besides Omnimon Alter S, the other cards do have the Adventure trait, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, no, so the level 5s have the Adventure trait, which is the big appeal, and the new Duo Tamer has the Adventure trait. So, like, there is a way for it to work in Adventures. It, again, just how well does that actually come together is the big puzzle piece. Like, I think Omnimon, a lot of people are really interested in from a deck building perspective, because same thing with the Machinedramon. Like, there's a lot of different tools that each of those 2 decks can use that make it very interesting to want to build because of how deep the toolbox goes. So, like, it's just a matter of solving that puzzle, and once that puzzle is solved, testing its metal against other current competitive decks to see how well it stacks up against the known field. Because Kaguyamon is a very simple deck to build, because you just play traditional puppets. You're just using new puppet tools with the old puppet deck, trying to just build up into a level 6. And then the level 6 ideally is going to be hard to get rid of, and also be able to deal a decent amount of damage. So, like, that's the real strength of what Kaguyamon's doing, and it's just all about speed and consistency if it's able to put together its game plan, and then how the other decks are able to react and respond. So, like, I think Megidramon actually would get worse because of Kaguyamon, because the rookie in the level 4 just say end the attack, but Megidramon will still be able to pop itself and do all of that shenanigans. And, like, that's where, like, you get into these, like, situations where it's just like, okay, if they pop themselves, I get to pop a level 4, keep myself around, then they play Gallantmon, and then they maybe out my Digimon. It all needs to be, like, actually tested rather than, like, shadow boxed in a sense.
Yeah,
but I do think, like,
think
just because of that, extra resilience and control elements that Puppets now got, Puppets actually has the potential to be on the map, which is cool. I'm not saying it's not cool. I think it's a very, very interesting prospect on what each of those 3 decks are bringing to the table.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Puppets also have access to Scapegoat now, if I'm not mistaken.
It's like pseudo Scapegoat, because Kaguyamon can use the Inheritable to sacrifice one of another token or puppet, specifically token or puppet, to be able to keep itself around.
Yeah, and I think like the tokens have like effects when they're deleted, and I think there's like effects that when something's deleted, you get to play a token out. So like it's constantly reoccurring its board.
Well, Kaguyamon also fills up its board also by itself. So like that's why the EX7 Sendril is really good, is because it's constantly spitting out bodies for you to then take advantage of. Whether it is overclock or not is to be determined, but I guess like it gives you good utility on the 2 main level 6s to be able to have good flexibility on what you're able to do and what you want to do. It is unfortunate that the rest of EX9, outside of those like literal 3 decks, which you don't technically need all of the pieces for, because with Omnimon you just need Omnimon and the aces, because you don't need the level 5s at all in order to make good with your Omnimon package, which is funny. So, like, Omnimon, you need 3 cards. Machinedramon, realistically, it's 2 cards, because Megadramon is, like, an absolutely correct card. Unsuspending as a cost is, if looking at Magic the Gathering, is a very dangerous thing to do. It, like, basically just gives them access to do whatever the heck they want. So not only is it unsuspending as a cost to do something, the do something is still also pretty good. So it's just 110% upside, no downside at all, which is not good designer balance. But that's another, like, I already talked about that type of thing ad nauseum at this point. And then, so with Machinedramon, you realistically need 2 cards, so we're up to 5 cards. And then, technically, out of Puppets, if you don't even want to run the low end, that's just another 2 cards. So you have, like, not even 10 cards out of 80 that are worth getting. That's not a good outlook for a set. I'm gonna be honest. Like, that's not gonna drive sales. And, like, I get it, the rest of the set's not trying to be power crept outside of those, like, 3 decks and those 10 cards. From a store's perspective, I honestly think this set is gonna hurt stores. I really do.
Yeah. So here's another question for you here. So this is mostly because I kind of did see that it looks like we got some more Tyrannomon support as far as more X antibodies and everything. And I'm kind of just looking over, and there is some Tyrannomons in this set. So do you think not necessarily in this when EX9 gets released, but when BT22 gets released, because of the fact that there is some Tyrannomons in EX9, could there theoretically be Tyrannomon be getting kind of come back around when that time period comes?
No.
Okay.
Because the new like, you have to stop and think, what is this Tyrannomon doing that would make me want to play him? The answer, unfortunately, is nothing. Like, you're still just better off playing the Ryutaro stuff in Dinomon, and the new X Antibody stuff would just go with that. Yeah, this new Tyrannomon, outside of literally just being a Tyrannomon, really isn't benefiting the deck in any way, shape, or form as far as what the current game plan and goal is for what that deck is doing. It's like the same reason why a lot of people aren't even going to look at the Greymon. And, like, yeah, it's a Greymon. Is it doing anything for the deck? Well, it's a Greymon. Yeah, but we have other Greymons. So is this doing anything for the deck? No. Okay, cool. Then you're just not going to be playing the card. And unfortunately, that's the perception the set has already had. And, like, so I bring this up because my LGS, the owner comes up to me and he asks, like, hey, how many boxes of this do you want? And I flat out told him, 0. I think this set is, outside of 10 cards, not a good set. And he's just like, he didn't, like, say, well, fuck me, but, like, he really was not super happy with hearing that I wanted 0 boxes, because that means those were boxes that he isn't going to be able to sell. Because if I'm like this, and other people are like this, it's not like a random bypasser is going to come in and just buy the box. Like, it's just unfortunate that it's going to be product that's going to sit on a shelf because it's a dead product. Like, again, outside of very hyper selective singles, but people are just going to get the singles. So it really paints a bad picture. And he told me afterward, like, well, I guess because of this, I'm going to have to start scaling back on Digimon again. Like, it literally just takes one set to ruin a lot. And when I heard him say that, I'm just like, I'm not going to stop him from making smart business decisions because Bandai decided to screw up. And, like, from his perspective, it's just like, I ordered the set 9 months ago. How was I supposed to know 9 months ago that this was going to be a garbage product? You don't. You have to take those risks. And when Bandai prints garbage sets, it really hurts the trust between Bandai and the stores. And now stores I don't know if it's going to be just my store or if other stores are going to behave something similar, where now they're going to be scaling back Digimon again, and now we're going to be running potentially into another BT16 situation because Bandai decided to print garbage.
Yeah, because I think the other thing though is like, I don't know if it's like I wouldn't say it's garbage just because like it's just very not good in general. I would say it's just kind of garbage because there's nothing besides like the 3 decks that really have a chance at the current meta situation right now. So I don't know if it is kind of like the whole scenario of ban restriction list, something needs to happen or the meta needs to change in order for other decks or other sets to have a chance to shine, because these older sets are just showing that they're still so much better than the newer stuff. Because I don't even know if like those 3 decks are going to be enough to change the current meta, if it's even going to change the meta at all. Like, we could hype up Omnimon all we want, but like out of like the ones that I've mentioned and everything, like just basic EX4 Omnimon toolbox there and everything, to me it's just like it's a lot of really old cards that I don't know if they could even keep up with the new stuff.
They
and then
can't.
using the adventure, yeah, and then like even using the adventure cards, it's like, can adventure really keep up with what the newer decks are doing? No, not really, because as you said, it took Long Zero, a really good player, to even try to attempt with adventure, and we didn't have any kind of answer with adventure of how to build the deck. And even throwing more cards in there now into the adventure deck, it's like going to be even more like, well, what do I keep, what do I not keep kind of situation.
Right, it throws adventure for a loop because of how finely crafted his deck was at doing what it was supposed to try to do to answer what the meta is presenting. And like that's where adventure came in as like a rogue / anti-meta deck, is because it had a good amount of tools, but nobody until him was able to put them together to have a real semblance of success. There were minor successes, but I would say his is the first real success. But I think like to kind of like answer your question a little bit, I think part of it is the playability ratio of what a set is. So usually you want, like, there's always going to be pack filler and garbage cards in sets. That's unavoidable. And that's on purpose from a designer standpoint, because you have to make bad cards so players can understand good cards. That's part of the designer mentality of why pack filler is the way it is. On top of pack filler being good, more introductory to new players, so that way they can get something accessible and then work their way up from there. But why pack filler is a thing aside, I think like there's a disproportionate ratio between what's actually good and what's not. And I think like looking at past sets, usually you want about, I would say 30, maybe 40% of your set to be playable cards. Like, these are actually decent and reasonable cards that people would want to pick up, and Digimon leverages its archetypes to be able to make that percentage potentially a little bit higher. But I think like with this set, because 80% of it is DM, and DM right now is mechanically weak, to put it lightly, really makes that ratio really bad and skewed. So like you have maybe 10% of the set that's actually playable, when on your average set it's about 40%, we'll just say. That's a 30% difference in playable cards, and like, yes, it's a smaller set, but that 30% is very much felt. And this is just using numbers lightly. I haven't done exact math to be able to figure it out. I probably could if I wanted to, but that's usually the range in which, as a designer, you probably would want a set to be at, in terms of like playable versus fun versus complete and utter pack filler.
Yeah, and I think another situation with the whole EX9 is there's not a good box topper with it. It's only one promo pack, and it's the Legends. And literally, what do we get from it? We get the BT20 Dracomon, We get the BT20 Doruan. That one I'm actually kind of wanting to get because it's a really nice looking art. BT20 Huckmon, and then EX4 Zubamon and EX4 Ludamon. That's it.
Yeah,
that's the promos of that.
All not super great promos. And the SPs are also pretty undesirable because they're all the level 5 DMs and then Machine Dramon. So it's just like Machine Dramon is going to be a hot card, but the rest of them outside of Megidramon are not. So it's just like you have some of, like, they're probably going to be some of the lowest valued, like, SP cards we have in the game. Like, I could see those cards being $50 cards at best. Maybe $50 is too low for their overall rarity, but I could see them being on the lower side compared to some of the others. Especially since the pull rates are technically a little bit more generous for those because it's an EX set. Yeah, it's just a big miss that hopefully isn't going to have a ripple effect that's going to impact future sets in terms of the accessibility of some of their cards. Because believe me, the last thing we need is another EX6 BT16 situation. That was a nightmare.
Based on the current reveals of BT22, like, I know there is like some more DM support, but it's still nothing that's like making me go, oh, that makes DM in this set from this set so much better. But right. BT22 in general, so far it doesn't look like, again, it's kind of the same thing. Nothing in that so far has looked or stood out. Like, I mean, at least this set, the Omnimon at least stands out from EX9, but so far in BT22, nothing has stood out to me in that, and that's kind of made me a little bit like dissatisfied about that. Like,
no, I think there's going to be a lot of like BT22 is, so there's a couple of different styles of sets. Like BT22, so EX9 is a flavor set. Nothing in there is actually supposed to be good. It's all 100% flavor, and usually flavor sometimes has really big balancing issues. But the way they handled the flavor for that set is very reminiscent of EX1, where everything was just so depowered that the set was basically worthless. And this is kind of echoing that almost verbatim, which is really ironic. But outside of that, I think with Cyber Sleuth in BT22, that's going to be what I would say is more of a fanfare set. There's strong things in it. There's complete decks in it, and I'm talking about like the Eaters, yes. So like that already will give players value to want to build into it, is because they could just build an Eaters deck and it's just gonna work. And it's going to be super easy, and it uses a lot of different cards from inside of the set. So that's like what I was saying previously on how they could leverage archetypes to be able to better balance playable card ratios. And Eaters doesn't look terrible, to be honest. Like, we still have Eaters left to look at, I'm sure. And it doesn't look like it's going to be that bad. Like, is it going to be Royal Knights broken? No. But it doesn't look like it's going to be borderline unplayable. But, I mean, I guess technically in the face of, like, Royal Knights, Megidramon, Sakuyamon, most things are unplayable. But, meta aside, like, a lot of people like Mirai, and even though Mastamon hasn't really done a whole lot, people still will buy out the WAs for those cards and that support. Same thing with Ulforce. Like, it feels like there's a lot of fanfare for it to be able to support the set existing in a sense. And then the last type of set is, this is very obviously the power creep set, where this is where they're just injecting a metric fuck ton of power for like zero reason, and it's just going to power spike the game. We've had a couple of those, but we've had more fanfare sets rather than power creep sets. I think EX9 was probably the last power creeps, or not EX9. EX8 was the last power creep set we had.
Would would you say EX8 was the power creep because of the? Because I would argue that maybe EX5 was way more power creep than what EX9 was.
EX5 100% was a power creep set. Like, you could usually tell, like, based on how many playable cards are still running around, if a set was power crept or not. So, like, EX5 100% was a power creep set. BT16 was 100% a power creep set. BT17 was a power creep set. And then they cooled off on EX8. They cooled off on BT18 and BT19. And then I would probably say EX8 was supposed to be another power creep set.
Yeah, because to me it's like, yeah, there's some good cards in EX8, but because like outside of what the Guillemon, like the X antibody line for Guillemon and Medieval Gallimon, what else was there from EX8?
You had the Sakuya, you had Sakuya X, and like Dinomon is still a very reasonable card that people are probably sleeping on, and it has nothing to do with like my perception of like Dinomon, like me liking Dinomon, because I think he's like design wise he's just okay. So like it's not even personal bias. I actually think that he is a reasonable card, especially in the current landscape of where the meta is. He definitely seems like he could still have a very strong place. Just because the mechanics he's working with are really decent. But EX8 also gave us some of the, like, it changed how blue works. That was the other big thing. Like, EX8 gave us a lot of, like, it started the change in how blue works. Technically, I think BT20 is what solidified the change in blue, because you had the brand new fish engine that came out of it that, like, a lot of blue decks just adopted for no reason. It's just like, yeah, I'm just gonna play blue X antibodies. That's why. So like that way you could run basically any X antibody top end you feel like you want, which X antibody cards are already pretty strong. So it started the whole blue X antibody. Granted, that was more BT20's fault than EX8. But yeah, like you could tell what's a very heavily power creep set, and what's a fanfare set, and what's just dead on arrival. And unfortunately, like we all, like the community acknowledged that EX9 was dead on arrival in terms of the set as a whole, not the individual cards, because each set does have its own set of individual cards that are good.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, to me, it's a shame that they introduced the that Avengers reboot villain. I can't think what his name is.
Negamon. And,
yeah, Negamon.
Negamon, Albedomon or whatever.
Yeah, it's just like it looked interesting at first, but then it's just like, what the heck am I even looking at right now? Because it just doesn't. Nothing about it screams even tier 2.
No, because he's too slow. Like, that's the unfortunate reality. And, like, you're going to have to compromise the deck to try to speed him up, but then you're compromising the deck. So it's like, it just becomes a little bit awkward at times on what am I actually supposed to do with this?
Yeah, so that's where it's like, to me, I'm thinking, like, unless they change up the meta with, like, a ban and restriction list, I don't see EX9 being successful. Like, if they change up the meta and everything, like, do a updated ban restriction list, like, because I know before we wouldn't get one till what, like maybe fall time and everything.
Yeah, maybe, usually late summer, early fall, like October-ish is usually when we see one. But hopefully, because of Nationals 1, maybe they'll do an update post Nationals 1 for everyone. That would be so nice. But I feel like they need to do more than just 2 ban and restrictions a year. Like,
yeah, and that to me is where I'm thinking, like, because we are on a unified format now, finally, it's like, well, use it to good use now. Like, kind of stay with the game, like, keep up with it and everything. Like, every other set, if you want to do a ban restriction list or something, you know, like, you clearly have the data, you clearly know what's topping, so.
the unfortunate thing is a ban and restriction list isn't going to save the fact that DM is like 80% of that set, and all of the DM cards are just dramatically underpowered. Like, I think there's some interesting things that could go in various other decks. Like, I'm looking at the Garurumon stuff for, like, Garurumon deck. Am I saying Garurumon's going to be revived? No. But is he going to be a little bit more playable? Yes. I mean, technically, he already was relatively playable. Just nobody's playing him because there's no reason to play him. But, like, you'll have some cute things sprinkled in that set that some people will look at, but as a whole, DM is just, it's not there. It's just so underpowered. It's like, if it came out a year ago, it would still be underpowered. That's how bad that set is you probably, like, this probably needed to be like EX4. Like, if this set was EX4, then the DM cards would be allowed to exist in some capacity. Like, that's how far back we have to go in terms of making the set, like, the DM more specifically playable. I think maybe a year ago, the villain of the set probably would have been playable. Yeah, probably a year ago, the villain would have been playable. I could see that being a reasonable deck a year ago.
Yeah, it just kind of seems like a lot of the sets that they are introducing now are just like you said, they've kind of been slowing down the power level of the deck, so to say, or the speed, tempo of the initial deck that they have built or designed for.
No, and that's fine. Like, that's good, because that's the road, like, that's a road to recovery in my perspective. Like, yes, you need to have consecutive back-to-back bad sets, in quotation marks, bad sets, like depowered sets, because then a good ban and restriction list can come in and magically fix the game. It's basically the same exact reason why a lot of people like rotation, is because, okay, for where Digimon currently is, rotation doesn't work as it stands. But if they have back-to-back bad sets and depower the game through multiple lower-powered sets, then a rotation can come in, scoop up all of the decks that are hyper-oppressive, and now all you're left with are those depowered decks, and now the game is back to a more reasonable power level. So, like, as much as we all hate low-powered sets, we need them, but I feel like this set specifically is a little too low power. But again, that's only if Bandai actually cares about trying to fix the problems with the game and where the meta currently is and whatnot. So, I guess to kind of wrap and round this episode out, we'll have fun. Do you have any ban and restriction speculations you want to see?
I mean, because when is the first Nationals supposed to be again?
I think, I don't even remember. I stopped caring. It's supposed to be in Texas in like a month or two.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll see a ban and restriction list around then and everything, so to say, to kind of like either to like maybe they'll just do a ban and restriction list after that and everything. Like, okay, guys, now that the meta is over and we're moving on to the next one, here's the ban and restriction list for this time around. Maybe that's what they're gonna do, but at that point, it's just like, to me, I feel like might as well just go ahead and get it done and over with now, so people who aren't going to Nets can at least try to hopefully get some kind of enjoyment out of the game still.
No, it's very common for competitive games to, or like games that want to be competitive, to do their ban restrictions after tournaments. So like Magic just had their Pro Tour Vegas, I think, and that meta was really bad, where it was just red deck wins or red-blue deck wins. So it was just Monstrous Rage wins, or whatever the stupid spell is that does monstrous things. But yeah, so they'll probably introduce a ban restriction list soon-ish to be able to try to fix their standard environment. So I would reasonably expect Bandai after Nationals to want to fix ours. And as far as what there is to fix, obviously based on this data, which is probably what they're looking at, Megidramon definitely needs some fixing. Like, yes, he has very obvious weaknesses, but if he's able to go faster than what those weaknesses and answers would allow to be able to solve them, then what are those answers doing? Nothing. So I think, like, Gravity Crush obviously is going to have to go. And then I think the only other card, based on their current trends, is Growlmon X. I think Growlmon X from EX8, that card's going to have to go because that card's enabling a lot of degenerate stuff. Not only just for Megidramon, but for, like, Phoenixmon also, because Phoenixmon is abusing the same exact engine because it's just triggering all of its on-deletes proactively, which is what's making on-deletes so strong. And it's got a lot of good ones. So I think limiting its good on-delete effects is definitely going to help curve the deck.
Yeah, and I do, like, I hate to say it, but I do think that they honestly probably should, at this point, limit the trainings all to just one and everything, like, just every color to be one and everything. Because, like, if you look at Sakuya and everything, is able to just play those out for free and everything. I mean, it's not like the scrambles where it's able to play out the scrambles for free and then Evo for free right then and there, so to say. But, like, I think just limiting all the training cards, because Megidramon's using the purple, so that's, like, helping his consistency and, like, just helping control the memory spending, I guess, so to say. And even Sakuyamon being able to do that same thing. And I think there's even, like, ways, like, even if they're playing those for free, like, and being consistent, they're gaining memory from those inheritables they have too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's just options that help with the consistency, which is what makes Sakuyamon so good, is because it is one of the more consistent decks.
Yeah, and I think Sakuyamon, it definitely should have its green option card hit. I can't think what it's called.
Evolution plugin?
Yeah, Evolution plugin, thank you. I mean, just being, like, another copy of Scramble, like, just another Scramble for them is, like, just ridiculous.
It's technically a better Scramble for them because I think it just does more for the deck because it's able to be retrieved.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, like, that's where a lot of people's, like, rotation arguments would come in, where it's just like, oh, if we had rotation, then the card would rotate out. And it's just like, yeah, but if they reprint it, then we're screwed either way. But, again, regardless, that's a good one. I think something from Royal Knights needs to go. Obviously, like, hitting something from the three best decks definitely helps curve the game. So, God, it's so hard to
I feel like it might have to be the option card.
Which option? Purge or the new one? Because I think the new one is a little bit more egregious. Because the new one just gives it early searching turns.
Yeah, and I think the newer one's also cheaper too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's 3 cost. It helps search for your Royal Knight cards, and then it keeps your Omnimon around if you don't want him to leave due to Drazel's effect.
It has to be that option card then.
I don't think anything else is really that egregious about the deck. I mean, granted, yes, the Omnimon's stupid, the Omegamon's good, the Cool Boy's good, but I think, like, just harming the consistency automatically helps curve the deck a little bit, because you can't curve its tempo, because the tempo is in the egg and you're not going to do anything to the egg. So I think just hitting that card's the most reasonable one. I know a lot of people want Purge to go, but I think, like, they're not going to... Who cares if they get a Rush Body? Like, they're not going to attack with it half the time anyway. Because
it's not even that.
They don't need to.
It's the fact that the newer one, not only is it cheaper play cost, it's searching, but it also does protection. It's like, that's a whole lot compared to what the other one does.
Yeah, the other one just plays out a body for free and tucks a body for 6 that you could potentially reduce. But yeah, I think, like, the consistency card's, like, the big one to hit in Royal Knights. I think Imperial definitely needs something hit, because if you hit the top 3 decks, Imperial literally, yeah, it has to be Ken and Davis. Like, Kenan Davis does just so much extra work for that deck, it's insane. Because I think if you hit Kenan Davis, then it forces the deck to not be super engine-y, to where you could just run any top end you want, because you're not rewarded for it anymore. Kenan Davis literally is rewarding you for doing way more than what the deck should be reasonably allowed. I think like the level 4s are stupid, but I think without Kenan Davis, they can stay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's probably it. If Kenan Davis is hit, then the level 4s can stay. If Kenan Davis is not hit, the level 4s have to go.
At least the XVmon level 4 needs to get hit, because the jamming inheritable, but also gaining the memory is like really good for the deck.
Yeah, like it's what I said. A lot of it's what I said in a lot of my other videos, that the game has some very clear tempo issues. So like just trying to curve some of the extra free, dumb, stupid value that a lot of these decks get is probably the easiest way to fix a lot of the game's problems. I'm not saying like to slow it down to a crawl where the game takes forever to finish, but like, you know, I don't need to gain memory for evolving. That's something that reasonably shouldn't happen. But like you said, I would like the trainings hit. I personally also would like the scrambles hit as well. I think like the way that we're using them is very much not intended on how they're supposed to be used. So,
well, I think it's mostly just the Sakuyamon being able to use the scramble the best, because they're playing it for free and they're getting evos for free.
No, the scrambles basically just allow any deck to be purple. And it allows purple to also not mill itself out.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. But I definitely think that the dog engine should definitely be hit also. Like, I know it's not doing anything too crazy right now, but it's kind of the whole Imperial scenario. If the others get hit, then you gotta hit that one.
Yeah, Goblimon's really stupid. I think Dober X is really stupid. I think maybe Cerberus can stay. It just depends on what they feel like is an actual problem. Usually I'm all for getting rid of like, hey, here's unwarranted free memory gain. That's usually my MO, is like, I think Cerberus is okay because you're allowed to have strong cards, but when it's harder to get into those stronger cards, then that's where the balancing becomes like more prevalent, where it's just like, oh, what's making Cerberus so good is partially the fact that you can just do all the stupid stuff. So Goblimon or Dober X probably should be the ones out of that engine. Goblimon more specifically, well, I mean, they're both kind of stupid. I don't know. It's difficult. As far as like looking at the metadata for some of the other top decks, Imperial, maybe the Wormmon, like red purple, because that Wormmon does a lot, because they're obviously not going to hit the promo. I'm just trying to think like what are some of the other top decks. Purple hybrids.
That one I don't know.
I think that one's okay to let exist for a hot minute still. Like, it still has some unhealthy play patterns, but, like, it's very clear that Bandai just doesn't care about how unhealthy those play patterns are. Heroes is fine. Gallant. I mean, if you're already hitting Megidramon and taking away their X, then Gallant's fine. Like, he doesn't need anything hit. Red purple, like I said, the only egregious thing is like the Wormmon. Especially if Davis and Ken gets hit, then that should be good enough. We already mentioned Dog. Galacti. Is there anything in Galacti that should be hit? Like, I know a lot of people kind of just don't like Ragnarok Cannon, but like that's like the deck at this point. Oh, the promo Destro. But I guess if you kill the promo Destro, that also kills the viability of the deck. I mean, it forces you to use the new Destro more, which could make the deck more annoying, but it makes it slower, so I guess that's fair. So probably maybe promo Destro.
I don't know for sure about the promo Destro, just because of the fact that you get rid of promo Destro, then that means any tamer decks out there, they could really be more prevalent in that point. If that's
Yeah,
the case.
that's why I'm hesitant, is because he's like the only real tamer hate that is in the game, and that's why he's in the top like 10 decks as is, or top 11 decks, is because his role of tamer hate basically feeds on whatever isn't in the top slots that isn't using tamers, which is the best decks.
Yeah, it's like, not trying to vouch for it, it's just, I don't think Destro is too crazy of a problem. I think.
Oh, Digicross. Okay, so Digicross Snatch. I think that would be the card.
I could see that, yeah, because I mean, getting a bunch of your needed pieces back and everything.
Yeah, I could see Digicross Snatch going.
I mean, the card I could imagine them hitting and everything is the Ragnarok Cannon, because if you're able to set up multiples of those, you're practically guaranteed. Like, no matter if your opponent has bodies on the field and everything, if you can set up multiple. Plus, I think there's, like, the Galacti and everything, it's able to really just play out, like, Ragnaroks from the trash and everything when Digivolving.
No, I get you.
But I really don't know if any of the other lower decks after Cerberus really qualify a ban and restriction list quite yet, just because of how I wouldn't say it's unreliable, but it's just how small of representation of what they can even do. Like, it's just going to be one of those things, like, after a ban and restriction list, just kind of see where the pieces fall and then kind of just go from there kind of scenario.
Right. Especially with other cards that are being introduced and how that's going to shake up the meta, if it does. So, like, Bandai admitted they love the wait-and-see approach, and I hate the wait-and-see approach. I'd rather just be a little bit more active, but who knows? I don't think outside of, like, the top 5 decks, we reasonably need to touch anything. Like, honestly, hit the top 4 decks, or just extended top 5 decks if you really want to. Hit something from the top 5 decks, kill the delay-based option garbage that are hyper generic, and I think, like, see where the game develops from there. And then kind of tackle those issues as they come, so to speak, if they become issues at all, because, like, just changing the tempo of the game will change how we're forced to play the game. So, I think that's all I got for this episode. There was a lot to this one. Like, holy crap. Just that bombardment of data. I'm so impressed and happy at Bandai for doing that. But, like, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. They need to fix events. They need to fix prizing. Make the game more rewarding for us to want to play more. And then, obviously, more frequent updates on ban and restrictions. Yeah. And then I think, like, the game's in a good spot. Like, I've said it for a while, and I'll say it again. The game's, like, literally just 1 or 2 good changes away from being a very good game. And we're still in that realm. It's not too late. It's just whether they're going to do it or not is the big question.
Yeah. Just a little off-topic thing. Do you think if they actually introduce, like, boxes and everything into, like, prizing, like, the person who wins could get, like, 3 boxes and then so forth, kind of, like, play down? Like, do you think that would actually be more, like, another good reason to be playing at these events?
I think that works for side events.
If they actually gave packs.
I think that works for side events. I mean, packs isn't terrible. So, like, along with entry, let's just say you get, like, 3 packs. Like, that's not terrible. I 100% would take that. Like, give me the event pack, give me the participation, and then give me 3 of the latest pack. Like, sure. It would be better. Because then if the event pack sucks, then I could still maybe try to RNG my way out of a bad situation with actual booster packs. I think that's a lot to ask for them, because, like, thinking about, like, the big events, like, that's just a lot of extra product that they're going to have to print just to give away. So from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense, and they're just better off printing promo cards and just handing them out, not like candy, but handing them out as needed.
Right. Sorry, just something I thought I'd pick your brain about and everything, especially if stores are like it would just be like another reason like for stores to carry more of the Digimon products is like if they're doing store regionals and they could give out packs and everything for pricing, like Bandai confiscates on like, hey, here's I don't know, the value of 2 booster boxes for you to give out for the players or something, as example.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Like, I could see good in it, but I also don't think from a business perspective that's realistically what they want, because Bandai plays things very safe and very I don't even want to say smart, but they just play things very safe when it comes to their printing of cards and supply. So like, this is just creating unnecessary product for them, and that's something from a business that they would want to avoid. But obviously something's gotta change, because whatever they're doing this year, I think like it's a good introductory to wanting to restructure their competitive events, but something very clearly is not working here. I mean, it's working for the few who are going to be those hardcore grinders, travel to every single event and whatnot, but that's not everybody, and I get that that's the point. It's not supposed to be for everybody, but like, when we see a dramatic reduction in competitive play in terms of how many events we've gotten, that's still always disheartening, because that's just, we see the reduction. We know it exists. We know it's there. And unfortunately, store events aren't necessarily fulfilling the same gap. If they're close, it's just the infrequency of them and the sporadic spread of them definitely is not helping. So, I don't know. I just want the game to get better, and I think it can. But that's where I'm at. So, any final thoughts this time, Jay Stewart?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's getting hot out there, so just keep in mind that some places have higher humidity and everything, so just be careful with your cards, guys, because God forbid if you have any high value cards like Mirage Gallimon or Medieval Gallimon cards get warped or something because of this weather.
Right. No. And on that note, stay safe, stay hydrated, and thank you everyone for making it all the way to the end. If you want to have your question answered for next week's episode, write it down in the comments below, so that way we could read it and you'll be a part of the podcast. And on that note, thank you all again, and we'll see you all in the next one. Later.